Very much, Peter Howe with New England Canada Business Council, and I want to say a huge thank you to all our terrific panelists that we've had this morning, and in particular, Michael Stoddard from Efficiency Maine Trust, Sam Evans-Brown from Clean Energy New Hampshire, and Jonathan Dowds from Renewable Energy Vermont. Thank you for moderating these panel discussions, and I feel we've had a superb discussion so far. Again, want to be sure to express our great thanks to our sponsors, Hydro-Quebec and Liberty Utilities, and the Quebec delegation in Quebec Government Office in Boston. And to finish our webinar today, I'm delighted to introduce two top officials from giving an electric utility perspective. We're going to have France Lampron, who's the Executive Director of Electric Circuit Électrique, which is Hydro-Quebec's public charging division, operating a network of charging stations all over the province. Chris Hilborn, Vice President, Customer Insights and Solutions from Liberty Utilities. And one of the things that I particularly love about this next conversation is that we'll hear from France talking about giving the perspective of a utility that has a lot of experience and is very far down the road. Just signed a deal last month with ChargePoint, so that ChargePoint works in Quebec. Quebec customers can roam onto ChargePoint in the United States, just the kind of coordination we need more of. So we have many years of rollout experience from Hydro-Quebec and Electric Circuit to talk about. And Chris can also talk to us, what's it like for a utility that's more at the beginning of this process and thinking about how do we best play in the EV space, both directly and also as enabling technology for private investment, public-private partnerships. So with that, France, let me turn the microphone over to you.
Thank you, Peter. So I have to agree with you. The discussion this morning was extremely interesting. And whether we talked about profitability, design rate, very cold weather, utilization rate, business models. I mean, so many topics that we could talk about. So the intent for this last 30 minutes is that I will give just a very brief overview of what we're doing at Hydro-Quebec. Then I'll let my colleague do the same, and then we'll open up to discussion. So any topics that you want to address, we'll be happy to answer. So let me show you. I have just one page to give you an overview of what we're doing, and can you see it? I hope you can. Can you see it? No?
I think we'll have Emily or Susan, one of our helpers there, punch it up momentarily.
Okay. All right. So I'll start. So next slide, please. Okay. So Marie-Claude talked about it. So we have very specific targets in Quebec. So for 2030, we have an objective of 1.5 million of EVs on the road. And we also have the objective of ending the sales of internal combustion engine vehicles as of 2035. So these public policies are very important because they're really shaping the offers that we get from manufacturers and from dealerships. So us, Hydro-Quebec, what we've committed to in order to reach those targets is that we're going to deploy 2,500 fast charging stations. And that is, and we talked about budget earlier this morning. So just to give you an idea, that objective for us translates into a budget of $400 million over about 10 years. So that's for the DCFCs. Right now, we have 600 DCFCs that are available and in service throughout Quebec. And so the remaining is what we're going to finance with the $400 million. As for the L2 charging stations, and I keep repeating the same thing for years now, the L2, the level 2 charging stations or the standard charging stations are the backbone of our network. They are as important, if not more important, than the DCFCs, because the more level 2 charging stations we have, the less DCFCs we need. And remember that, of course, it is a lot more expensive to charge on a DCFC than it is to charge on a standard charging stations, for obvious reason. So we want to try to alleviate the pressure on the DCFC sites by implementing as many L2 as we can. So that's for the charging stations. Now we are also looking at new sectors of activities for us. So the public charging network for light vehicles, we have specific objectives, and we keep on doing that full speed ahead. Besides the volume of charging stations that we're working on, we're always working on improving the service to our customers. So we have a new mobile application that allows our the members of the electric circuit to use a trip planner. We also are offering now commercial offers to our members. So what that means is that when you are when you are fast charging, you're there for 20-30 minutes, and Rose alluded to that in her presentation. Now people, they want more service. So when we started 10 years ago, because this year it's going to be the 10th anniversary of the electric circuit. So when we started 10 years ago, people were really, really enthusiastic, and they were the early adopters, and they did not mind. They would go charge in a field in the dark, and they were happy. Now that we have the general public using our equipment, we have to be more sophisticated in the offer that we're giving to our customers. And one aspect of that is offering them commercial offers while they're charging. So if they're charging for 20 minutes, we're offering them a rebate on a meal, maybe a free water bottle, maybe a rebate on something in the retail store. So the intent is always to make their charging experience more pleasant. So, and we're coming up with new ideas all the time to make sure that the customer experience is really optimal. So that's the public charging for light vehicles. Now, what we're looking at now is public charging also, but for heavy duty vehicles. And that's a whole different ball game, because we cannot have heavy duty vehicles come to the same charging station as the light vehicles. Sometimes it's not the technology that's a problem. It really is the structure of the site that needs to be different. So this is something that we're looking at. We're also looking at offering charging services to taxis. So taxis cannot wait. They have to have an available charging station. How do we do that? Do we reserve them? So we have different ideas that we want to experiment in a pilot project. And we're also thinking of the garage orphans. So I believe it was Barry Wood this morning that was saying that most of the charging is done at home. And it is true. Right now, it is completely accurate, but we know that is changing. So in Montreal, for instance, there's a lot of people who do not have access to a driveway or to even a set parking. So they are garage orphans, and they need a way to charge their electric vehicles, particularly in the context where our government has decided that as of 2035, they will have to charge somewhere. So this is something that we're looking at, and then what we're also doing is that we're testing the different technologies. Inductive charging is one of them. Autonomous charging station. So autonomous, not in the sense that it will charge the car on its own, autonomous from the grid. So we heard about that this morning as well. What do we do when we're in the middle of nowhere and there's no three-phase power? So we have this project where the charging station is powered by a battery and solar panel, and that could be put in those pieces of road where there is no network from the grid. Last but not least, a mobile charging station, whether it be for different events, temporary events, or whether it be for people who do not have electricity anymore. So this is another technology that we're looking at. And the V2G, well, this is a pilot that we've done a few years ago, and I'll be happy to talk about it if you are interested. So that's it for now for me. So now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague. Thank you.
Thanks, Franz. Can you hear me, Peter?
Yes, Chris, you're good.
Fantastic. So, hey, thanks everyone, and thanks for that, Franz. It's you are in such a different place than we are as Liberty Utilities. So, thanks to the NECBC for having me here today. Liberty Utilities is in the footprint. I'm really excited to talk about what we're doing. So, for folks that don't know Liberty, we're natural gas, water, and electric utilities. We have over 1 million customer connections, mainly in the US, in Canada. And we're slightly different than, I'd say, the normal utility because we're growing. We just this month acquired 125 new water connections in New York. And we're in the process of acquiring another 225 electric connections in Kentucky. Knock on wood, that'll be part of our portfolio in Q3 of this year. And so within New England and Eastern Canada, we have 50,000 electric connections in New Hampshire and about 200,000 gas connections in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and New Brunswick. So some of you may be our customers. So I lead a team called Customer Insights and Solutions. We're really focused on enabling a great customer experience across these utilities. And part of this includes products and services, which is EVs. So, Emily, if you could put up the first slide for me. I guess our mantra overall is that, as an electric utility, and I'll speak from the electric utility perspective right now, we need to be able to support our customers in the way they want, when they're ready for EVs. It would be a really bad day for us at Liberty if a customer bought an EV and we weren't able to support them. So, what have we been doing? Well, first of all, we studied our grid and, based on the anticipated rate of adoption in New Hampshire, in Missouri, and in California, where it's a little more advanced, as we know, we're able to support the EV growth. So now it's really about, what programs can we put in place? How can we help our customers? How can we do a bit of a push, a bit of a pull to bring them along? And, these programs are really focused on residential, business, schools, public, where our customers are going to want. So maybe flip to the next slide for me, Emily. So our current programs are really aligned with what we're hearing from our customers, the rate of adoption, but we're pushing the envelope a bit. And we're pushing the envelope in terms of, how can we help our customers? How can we help them think more about EVs, feel more comfortable with EVs? And, as we heard from many panelists today, we're learning as we go. So I think it was Michael that discussed how rural areas can be a real challenge, right? And coincidentally, most of our utilities are in rural areas. All of our electric utilities are in rural areas. We don't, unfortunately, have a city like Montreal, right? They're all small and very, very spaced out. So, and a couple of our utilities, both in New Hampshire and Missouri, are in non-ZEV states right now. So, the charging infrastructure is a bit limited. So, we took a look at this and we thought, well, how can we push this along? And we're actually further ahead in Missouri than New Hampshire. So let me just talk about Missouri for a bit and what we did there. So what we did is we went to our commissions, we went to our customer commissions and, actually requested that we own some of this charging, that we jumpstart some of this and we get it in place. And just last week, we actually had our filing approved. So we are the first utility in Missouri allowed to own our own infrastructure. And we're doing this because we truly believe it's best for our customers. It's going to jumpstart what we're doing. So what are we doing? The first thing we've done is we have a fast charger in place. It tells you a bit about the infrastructure when it's the first fast charger we just put in place. It's on a highway between Tulsa, St. Louis, and Kansas City, so a fairly important highway, and we'll be able to reduce any anxiety for travelers traveling through that area. Now, as part of this filing, we have 65 more fast chargers and L2s that have been approved, but it's not that the Missouri Public Commission or the Consumer's Office are writing us a blank check for these. As part of our filing, right, we need to demonstrate a need for the chargers. So we need to show the growth, show the data around that. We've agreed to share, and as part of it too, the costs are going to be recovered in part by the participants. So it's not fully on all customers. And we've agreed to share all the learnings openly. So there'll be a ton of data coming out of this, whether it's around usage times. There was discussion around demand charges today. And, we see this, I see this as an impediment as well, especially for, business fleets that may be charging overnight, and that'll draw just a huge demand. So, how can we move away from demand charges to other rate structures? We're also going to be looking at what Franz talked about is, how do we provide some charging in the event of an outage? If there's a storm event, and we have ice storms in New Hampshire or tornadoes in Missouri, how do we ensure our customers, how do we give them the confidence that they can fuel their vehicles and use their vehicles as they need to? So we're working with FreeWire as well around some of our chargers having solar and storage to be able to charge these vehicles. So you can see very much we're in a learning process right now. It's very new for us. We see it as an iterative approach. We see it as very much a collaborative and partnering approach and learning as we go, right? In New Hampshire, Sam showed earlier that Eversource and Unitil had put in some filings. We'll be filing as well in 2023. So that'll increase the pool of money that we saw there. And, we feel it's the right time. We see our customers in New Hampshire starting to embrace EVs. Part of this, maybe there's a bit of an influx we see from Massachusetts into our areas in New Hampshire, and Massachusetts is a bit more further ahead in terms of EVs. There's better vehicle availability coming out, and we talked about the pickup trucks earlier. That's going to be a game changer. So we're going to do our part to accelerate this and ensure that our customers have what we need in New Hampshire. And Peter, I'll stop there. Give us 10 minutes for any questions or any discussion from our panelists or attendees.
Excellent. Well, I think my first question, which we could talk about all day, but Franz, I would love to ask you if you're thinking about lessons you could share from HQ's experience for New England utilities, appreciating HQ, different business model, different regulatory model, but still in that context, for utilities in New England like Liberty that are at the beginning of the EV curve, what are some things you would encourage them to think about based on the experience HQ and Electric Circuit have had?
That is a good question. We learned so many things. We made all the mistakes. So probably the one lesson that I would like to share with as many charging operators as I could is do not underestimate the financing that is needed to operate the charging stations once they're installed. So we've seen it everywhere in many jurisdictions. The operators are using often public money to deploy, and then there's no more money left to operate. And these charging stations are not completely mature in the sense that they need a lot of love. They need to be monitored. They need to be maintained, preventive maintenance. They need to be repaired when the snowplower just is a little bit too close to the charging station, and that's very costly. And I think people underestimate that a lot. And if we do not provide a good service. If we have EV drivers driving to charging stations that do not work, that is worse than no charging stations at all. We need to have them up and running, and we need them to be reliable. Otherwise, there's a lot of damage that is done to our cause, which is e-mobility. So I think that would be probably the most important lesson that I would like to share. And yeah, it's very intensive. There's a
That's
lot of
interesting.
expenses.
Let me ask, I don't want to ask you to give away proprietary trade secrets, but if you're thinking about $10 million for EV deployments, what percentage of that might you recommend utilities hold in reserve for operating expenditures and maintenance?
Oh, well, I'd have to calculate, but you remember I gave you a figure of 400 million to deploy, let's say about 2,000 charging stations, and out of that there was 80 million for OPEX. So I'd have to calculate what's
healthy 20%. That's good to know. And Chris, we noted with interest that you have in New Hampshire approved time of use rates for electric vehicle charging. I wonder if, just for people who may not be totally familiar with that, I wonder if you can say a little more about how that works and how important it is for you, Liberty Utilities, to make the economics work.
Yeah, great question. So we were actually asked or mandated to put in time of use rates, which we agree with, we fully agree with. It's important because, as you think about peak times during the day and in the winter where most of us are located, that's kind of between 7 and 9 a.m. and sort of 5 and 8 p.m., depending on the location. It can make a real difference to the grid and demand and greenhouse gas emissions. If everyone comes home from work and plugs in their vehicle at the same time. So the time of use rates, as I'm sure a lot of folks on this call know, is really to incent that charging to happen overnight, sort of between 12 and 12 p.m. or 12 midnight and 6 a.m. Right. So you're asking, how do we make it work? Well, from a utilities perspective, we are regulated, we have a rate of return. So really for us, from an electrification perspective, it doesn't mean we're necessarily going to increase our return because it's regulated. But what it means, and what I really like, is that it can lower the kilowatt per hour cost for all of our customers. So as EVs come on board and there's more usage, right? And most of the EV adoption right now is in more of the affluent space. The affluent customers are actually helping us all pay less per kilowatt hour. And that's one of the things I'm looking forward to, is the reduction in that cost per kilowatt hour.
Great. Franz, we got a great question from, I believe it's Imran Kidwai. I apologize if I'm mangling your name. Question about mobile charging and how the scenario you see, who the user is, how mobile charging works in the real world.
So right now it's just a concept on paper. And this is something that we want to do this year. We see two applications for the mobile charging. For instance, let's say, and I know it sounds a bit foreign these days, but let's imagine that we have a festival of some sort with real people. And we know that there is going to be an affluence of EVs for that very event. We would like to be able to bring temporary charging station for that event, just to cater to the specific needs of that very day or that very week. So this is one of the applications that we're seeing. The other one, like I said, is really for people who run out of electricity, but that's a little bit more far-fetched, because it implies using fuels instead of a battery. So we don't know exactly, but the first application is definitely something that we're looking into. I hope that answers your question.
Excellent. No, it makes me think of cell sites on wheels for everybody's smartphones that they roll in for events like that.
Yeah.
I am mindful that we are getting up a bit against time, but Chris, one question I would love to put to you, again, a big question that I'm giving you a couple minutes to answer, how Liberty is thinking about being in this business directly yourself versus being a wholesale enabler, providing an enabling technology to other ventures. How are you thinking about that, in particular in New Hampshire?
Yeah, are you asking, Peter, whether we would compete with someone like a ChargePoint, or is your question slightly different?
Yeah. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but are there what's the the scenario in which you think it makes sense for Liberty Utilities to be directly engaging with the customer and the customer's vehicle versus providing supportive technology?
Yeah. Okay. Ultimately, I think we want to enable our customers to be able to charge when they need to. And we're willing to do that in a partnership model with someone like a ChargePoint who would come in and charge their rates, right? Or we're willing to do it on our own if that model doesn't necessarily work for some of the third parties like ChargePoint or Flow that we saw today, or FreeWire, right? And because it may not be as economical for them. What we do want to do, whether we go down either route, is ideally do some managed charging, so we can control the power that's going through the grid. Where we don't necessarily need it yet, but we will in the future. And yeah, that's probably the biggest thing for us, is having a piece in the managed charging and a piece in the data. And otherwise, we're willing to partner and collaborate or do it ourselves as we need to, whatever's best for our customers.
That's great to know.
May I chime in on
to
that?
give you the last word, the dernier mot.
Okay, I just wanted to add a little bit on what Chris said, because the very reason that Hydro-Québec decided to get involved in the public charging was because nobody else would. And we wanted to just give this as impulsion to the market. And we're even thinking now, I mean, at some point, if the private sector is populating the public charging space, maybe we will withdraw, because the only reason we're there is to fill a void. So at some point, Hydro-Québec might stop doing that. So anyways, that gives you a bit of perspective on our vision with regards to public charging. So yeah, well, thank you very much for inviting me to this event. I thought that the discussions were extremely interesting, and I'd be willing to pursue them with the participants should they need any more information from us. So thank you very much.
No, that's great. No, thank you, Franz, so much. And thank you, Chris. I want to say again, a big thank you to everybody who's joined us today. And any questions that you have, please, reach out in terms of following up with specific panelists. You can send your questions to New England Canada Business Council, and we'll be sure to route them in the right direction. We'll also be making recordings available from today to people as well. And one last time, could not have done this today without the generous sponsorship from Liberty Utilities, from Hydro-Québec, from the Quebec Government Office in Boston. This is what we hope will be the first of many conversations that NECBC helps facilitate about electric vehicles, and in particular, how our two countries and regions can best work together. So thank you so much to everybody for participating. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to resuming this conversation again soon.